Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Patty Blue Hayes. Thank you so much for subscribing. If you're new here, I moved to Panama in 2019 and thought I was going to live in a beachside condo, but decided that the climate in the mountains was much more my speed. I live in El Valle. I bought a fixer-up house and spent 8 months renovating that property. Today, we're going to talk about all things driving in Panama. Let's start with some of the basics. If you're coming to visit Panama for an extended period of time, so if you're coming from the US or Canada, you can have a tourist visa stay for 6 months. But guess what? You can only legally drive for 3 months, 90 days on your license from the country where you came from. I'm going to include Poland here because I'm looking at my stats and I have viewers from Poland. Thank you. I'm part Polish. Your visa is for 3 months, a tourist visa, but you can extend it once while you're here. But still, the driving rules apply where you can only drive for 90 days in Panama on your foreign driver's license. So you'd think the easy thing to do would be land at Tocumen Airport in Panama City, rent your car, and go off and explore the country. Typically, you might be going to the beaches area in Coronado. Maybe you're going to go to Portobello and see some of the Caribbean side. You might go to Santa Fe in the mountains. You might go to Santa Catalina, David, Boquete, Volcan, Bocas del Toro. So I think a smart thing to do is if you're going to be spending most of your time outside of Panama City, rent your car in Coronado, because in Panama City, you're gonna have like a 2-hour drive to get to Coronado. And that 2-hour drive can be wildly unpredictable as far as traffic, safety, road conditions. And I'm gonna talk about some of the risks and weird things that you'll find on the roads in Panama. But that would be my recommendation. Now, when I first visited Panama, I didn't listen to anybody's recommendation because I thought I have experience driving in all sorts of countries, with crazy drivers and rules. And I arrived at night and was going to rent my car and drive to Altos del Maria, which is in the mountains, and arrive after dark to my Airbnb. And I was stubborn and insistent. So if you were my Airbnb hosts, I still apologize to this day because they had to come meet me at the entrance and I had to follow them, and it was like 1 a.m. and I had to follow them in, to get to the property. I was tired. The mountains are crazy. Like if you haven't, driven over that pass to get out of Panama City and into Cocle province, doing it at night is not advisable. So there's no reason to have a car in Panama City. Uber is recommended. Taxis less recommended because they can tend to be a little more risky as far as taking advantage of you on the fares. And I've even heard some stories about robbing people. So stick to Uber. Everything is tracked and traced, and you can have a little more sense of security with Ubers, and the price ahead of time. So renting a car in Coronado is advisable, and you can explore the rest of the country from there. One thing to note is the insurance. So when I did my research on renting a car in Panama, there was conflicting information, and again, I was stubborn in thinking I don't need to buy their mandatory liability insurance because my credit card said that I'm covered no matter where I am renting a car. And I printed out the information from the credit card in English, in Spanish, and confirmed with the rental car agency that I wasn't going to be forced into buying their, mandatory liability. The original company that I had reserved with, was adamant that I had to buy their mandatory liability. And in the time that I was waiting, I just went to a different counter and asked them, like, are you going to charge me this mandatory liability? And they said no. So I went with them. I don't even remember what the name of that company was, but I think these are rules that change quite a bit, and there's a lot of vague information maybe. So plan to pay the mandatory liability insurance, and if you find a company that doesn't make you pay it, that's good, but also make really clearly certain that you are covered for liability, because it is risky driving in Panama, and I'm going to mention a few of those things coming up. Okay, so let's say you've decided, all right, I'm going to take Patty's advice and rent a car in Coronado, but how do I get to Coronado from Panama City? A lot of different ways. If you are adventuresome, you can take the bus from Albrook. You can take, one of the larger buses and get to Panama. If you want a little more relaxing and stress-free, you can find private drivers, and you can also use services that will provide like van transportation. You can post in the Coronado Facebook group to get recommendations, or even actually in the Panama City Facebook group, because there are people that live in Panama City and are licensed to be able to drive you to Coronado. It's always best to support the businesses who have valid business licenses and whatever requirements are needed, because it actually is a lot of work, time, and money for them to get these permits for their business, and it's nice to be able to support them in becoming a legal practicing business. Okay, so let me share some of the things that I have seen and experienced driving in Panama in the past 5 years that I've been living here. And then also I'll tell you about the accident that I had where I was hit by a really big Naturgy truck. Okay, so I have cracked a tire rim on a pothole. That's how deep some of the potholes can be. And some of the potholes will get filled. Sometimes they'll fill them with big concrete blocks, like excess construction materials. And you think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna bust a tire driving over this. But you just go more slowly, but the potholes are actually more dangerous than the stuff that they're putting in the hole to make it able for you to drive over it. So potholes are a big concern. In the rainy season, you have to really, really, really be careful for flooding. In the heavy rains, it can be extremely hard to see. It's worth pulling over and just waiting, because the heavy rain won't last that long. If it lasts 15 or 20 minutes and you've just pulled over, it's worth, just sitting there and not risking any number of, problems that can happen with the flooding on the road. Obviously, you can hydroplane. Somebody else could be speeding by and hydroplane and, hit you. Big water can splash from the other side of the road that can blind your vision. Animals, it's very stressful driving in rainy conditions. So if it's a heavy rain, just pull over and wait it out. Okay, some of the things I've seen driving in Panama. First of all, you have all sorts of animals, dogs, I haven't really seen too many cats like in the road, but dogs running in the road, they will lay in the road, just, I don't know why. Chickens, iguanas, and I always try and slow down for the iguanas, sloths, what else? So anyway, I don't know, all sorts of animals. Vendors. When you're driving out of Panama City, I remember the first time I saw this, I was just shocked. There are street vendors in the middle of the highway with their carts selling snacks, water, soda, any number of things, but they're standing there in between lanes. So the idea is that, traffic is slowed down, but still you've got motorcycles that are zipping around in between cars and lanes. And then you've got these vendors. And even though you're in traffic that's slow, it can be kind of jarring to see a person with a vendor cart in the middle of the road. It's just not something that I was ever used to in the US. That's totally illegal. You will also find people driving in the emergency lanes, which is also not legal in the US, but pretty common here, but very dangerous. So you have to be aware of that. Like if you're driving in the far right lane, you can't assume that you have that space in the emergency lane to your right. You'll also have very aggressive drivers that will tailgate, which can, be very stress-inducing. And they don't understand, like you might be having a safety concern, you might be having something wrong with your car, you might be lost, but whatever, any number of things. I don't think they think about these things. There's not a huge amount of driver education in Panama. And so a lot of times people get their license and it's like kind of how most of us felt when we were 16 and started driving. And you just take a lot of liberties that you probably shouldn't really be taking. So you have to be on the defense when you're driving in Panama. Sometimes, you'll be in the far left lane and have every intention of getting over to the middle lane to let someone pass, and they will just cut off and zip around you really fast. Use your turn signal. A lot of drivers won't use the turn signal, but obviously just use your turn signal, try and be as calm as possible, and stay out of the way of all the madness that's going on around you. Use Waze to navigate. That is an app that will also identify where police are located. It will say police reported ahead, and then you'll want to kind of slow down because the speed limits can change quickly. It could be 80 kilometers per hour and then it drops down to 60, usually when you're going through a populated town. But it's helpful just to have the Waze app on and pay attention to where police are and to slow down, obviously. And really you shouldn't be speeding, to begin with. And I'll talk about that in a minute about what to do, if you're caught speeding. The funny thing here is that the police, when they pull you over, they come out into the road and stand and point at you and direct you to pull over. And I always thought like, oh, I'll just avoid eye contact. I'll just, if I see a policeman, I'm just gonna avoid seeing them and like, nope, don't see you. You cannot do that. They have like this Darth Vader stare and they come out with this commanding presence and point, and you absolutely know and cannot deny that they're pointing at you and telling you to move over. I got pulled over for speeding going into the city. I was in like Gorgona and got caught speeding. I think I was going like 80 in a 60, which is kind of easy to do because 80 kilometers is not really all that fast in miles per hour, but I can't do the conversion. So the officer gave me the ticket, and because I have a Panamanian driver's license, I was able to track that ticket online on Surtrasun, and eventually was able to pay it online. But it took about 3 months for the ticket to actually show up on Surtrasun. So it's my obligation to keep checking and not forget about it. So I would just put a calendar reminder on, like check Surtrasun, check the website. And that was fairly easy to do. And it was actually fairly easy to pay my ticket online, which I was kind of surprised about. So if you're driving on your foreign license, you don't have a Panamanian driver's license, I beg you, please do not pay a bribe to the policeman. They will tell you, oh, you can pay it now, right here, pay cash, just pay it right now and it'll go away. Don't do that, because that sets up a business, basically, that the policemen will then target foreign drivers and pull them over to solicit bribe payments. And we don't want to support that kind of black market business. So don't pay a bribe. Just be firm that you'll take the ticket, even if you're a tourist and you're not going to be back in the area. If you have a rental car, first thing you want to do when you decide to rent a car, ask them, if I get a speeding ticket, what do I do? So they should have some information for you on what to do. If you're in an area and you get a ticket that, let's say you're in Boquete and you're there for a few months, you will be able to pay your ticket at one of the Surtrasun offices. Another option is to have someone pay the ticket for you. I don't know exactly how this works, but you can post in some of the Facebook groups in the area where you're going to be, if that is an option, if that's something that can happen. And if you want to be preemptive, you can ask these things ahead of time, because it's kind of easy to break the speed limit, because they do change so quickly from one stretch of the highway to another. And if you don't have Waze on and you get pulled over, those things happen. Okay, I'm gonna talk about police checkpoints, but just a couple of the other things to be on the lookout for when driving in Panama are pedestrians. Lots of people walking on the roads, like on the small mountain roads. Like I live in Valle, up, a very small mountain road. And there are houses all along that road. So that road is the way that people walk to get from, house to house, or the little store, or to get their, propane tank. So you'll have families walking. It's where, kids are waiting for a school bus, or people are waiting for the bus to go up and down the mountain. On weekends, you might have party people, so drunk people, and they can be staggering and unbalanced. I've actually had an occasion where in El Valle, thankfully this was on a small road, and it was late at night, there was a person laying in the road, not even on the side of the road. He was passed out drunk in the middle of the road. So you really have to be careful. The blue hearts that you'll see painted on the roads, those are where people have lost their lives. And with reckless drivers, drunk drivers, speeding people, intoxicated drivers, there is a lot of risk. And also, the maintenance of cars. Some vehicles look like they really shouldn't be legally on the road. You might see, cars that are kind of wobbly, that maybe the suspension is off, or, they look like they're a little bit sideways. They're not looking like they are really going to last much longer on the road. You'll also see trucks overloaded with produce, and trucks with cows, just all sorts of vehicles that might be a little bit overloaded. And if they're going fast and taking a turn, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. I used to get really nervous at the police checkpoints, especially during the time when I actually wasn't legally supposed to be driving. It was during the pandemic, and the embassy had canceled my appointment to get my license that way. You can get your license apostilled and then get your Panamanian driver's license. So that appointment took me like 3 months to get, and then I had to wait 3 months, and then in that time they canceled because of the quarantine. And I admit I drove illegally. I didn't really see any way around doing that, and I would email the American embassy. I think they responded like 9 months later. I was trying to ask them, like, what do I do? I needed their help. I'd only been in the country like 5 or 6 months. Anyway, so at the police checkpoints, it used to really stress me out. And then, they'll just ask for your license, maybe your cedula. And I think they're actually a good idea because, then you're going to see people pulled over who might be intoxicated, or people who are driving with an expired license or no license or no insurance. And so I don't mind them. Or, maybe they're looking for someone who is suspected of a crime. So I don't mind them at all now. And I don't feel like, I'm going to be like targeted or harassed. I think in the US, I would definitely feel like that because I have been harassed by police and state troopers actually when I had my RV and did an 8-month RV trip. But here, I don't feel any kind of sense of, threat to my safety. So kind of hard for me to believe, but I've been here for 5 years, and it came time for me to have to renew my Panamanian driver's license. And I had read that you could do this online. And so I started researching about 2 months, early, because I wanted to make sure that I would be able to do this. And if I wasn't able to do it, that I was going to leave myself enough time to make an appointment or do whatever I needed to do. Surprisingly, I was able to renew my license online. It was a little bit challenging because the first page of the Certrasan website I could translate from Spanish to English. But once I got further into the website, the pages wouldn't translate, and so I was using my phone and using Google Lens to translate what was on the computer screen. I filled out the information, and then on the laptop I had to take a hearing test and a vision, I think it was a vision test. So I didn't have any headset that had two, ear plugs. I have a headset that has one earpiece, and then I had something that would plug into my laptop, but one side wasn't working. One of the sides wasn't working. So then I had to navigate taking the hearing test on my phone, because I do have earpieces that work. And I was able to do that. I was able to get into the site and back to all my information without having to start over and take the hearing test on my phone. And then, everything was submitted. And then I got an email from Surtrasan a few days later that some of the information I had to update. So I went back into the site, I updated the information, and then I got an email that my driver's license was ready. So it's ready for me to pick up in Panama. I opted to go pick it up in Panama because I didn't want to deal with any complication of having it delivered by Uno Express to the Uno Express office here in El Valle. I just didn't want to put any complications into the system, because then I'd have to figure out how to pay for the Uno Express, and I just wanted to keep it simple. So I will go down to Panama and hopefully pick up my license. Just a note that we're in mid-November now, so dry season, high tourist season is coming in a few weeks. It kind of starts in December. It goes, through April, May-ish. And you do have to be just cautious about your driving because people are in a hurry. Holidays are a big time of celebration here in Panama. Lots of people are out shopping, they're out driving to go visit with family and friends. And so you just want to make sure that you give yourself time and, drive safely. Speaking of holiday things, if you have people that you are looking for a gift, check out my coloring books, especially good for seniors, maybe people with vision that might not be what it used to be. It's also really good for anyone who has any kind of cognitive impairment. I designed them to be easy, simple, stress-free, and some of the nostalgic ones are specifically for people with cognitive impairment and dementia. Now, I don't know if what I'm gonna talk about applies to obviously all areas of Panama because they're very different, but my experience staying in the Coronado area during high tourist season with the traffic is that it gets very congested. On the weekends, a lot of people will come from Panama City to spend time at the beaches. So that just increases the traffic. And in the Coronado area, they'll put up the dreaded cones and you cannot take a left-hand turn. And sometimes you have to drive up past Punta Barco to turn around to come back to then take a right to get into Coronado. The parking lots can be full at the grocery stores, there can be long lines, and the traffic to get into Coronado at the gate can be backed up for a while. So people generally advise that, you stock up on the stuff that you need and you just enjoy your weekend at home and try not to go out. Go out during the week, do your shopping during the week, and try to avoid those peak times, which is generally, Friday mid to early or late evening, and then Sundays in general, like Sunday morning into Sunday afternoon and sometimes Sunday night, or if it's a longer holiday, Monday. Okay, some other risks of driving in Panama. There really aren't shoulders on smaller roads. So you might be on a small road and you see grass to the right and to the left, but that grass is not level with the road. It goes down into a cuneta, like a gutter, and I think it's called a cuneta. Maybe it's not. Somebody will tell me the correct thing. So you might think, oh, I can just pull over. No, 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 no. Don't make that assumption because you could go off, into a steep ravine. There are very few areas where there are guardrails. So you have to be on the lookout for that, on windy roads. Very few areas where there are guardrails. Sometimes the lines aren't painted on the road, or maybe they were revised, and so you might be thinking that you're following a line, but then it actually goes to somewhere that's like blocked, and the road actually is continuing off in a different direction. So you just have to be mindful of that the line painting might not be 100% accurate. And that expression, I think it's, you have, champagne dreams on a beer budget. Well, with my driving, I have Hilux dreams on a CRV budget. So I would take my CRV, which is all-wheel drive, but it's not four-wheel drive, down some very questionable roads, and on several occasions got stuck, either by slipping off of, the things that keep your tires up, if they're even those. Sometimes it's just rocks and gravel and dirt, or going down a road to try and find a waterfall where the road was getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And I kept going thinking like, well, there'll be a space where I could turn around maybe, like if it's going to get too bad, but there might not be a space to turn around. So unless you have a four-wheel drive, it's best not to take those risks going on the dirt roads, especially in rainy season. If you are a risk taker, do that in dry season, but in rainy season, don't do that. It won't end well. You'll get stuck in the mud, and someone will have to come tow you out, and you'll be in the middle of nowhere. And that leads me to my next thing, which was my accident. And I had signed up for the Panama helpline, just for this reason. But when I had my accident, it totally escaped my mind that I was a member of the Panama helpline, and so I didn't call. But if you live here, I would definitely recommend getting the Panama helpline, because unless you speak fluent Spanish, I don't know about you, but in an emergency, I'm not thinking clearly, and there's no way I'm going to be able to think in Spanish to translate like, hey, I need an ambulance, or who do I call? I just had an accident and got pushed off the road. So the Panama helpline, if I ever get in another accident, I will call them. They will figure out who to call, tell me what I need to do, and that will be handled and taken care of. With my accident, oh my God, what a nightmare story. This is such a long story, but I'm going to try and make it brief because I think I've talked about it in a different video actually. But insurance brokers, very different here than in the US. They don't get paid a lot for their commissions, and so it's very rare that you would find like a full service, broker where you call them for everything you need. You call them, when you have an accident. And even if the broker tells you like, yes, call me, I'm your person, that might not be true, because my person told me that, I got you, I'll take care of it. And she was a friend. So of course I believed, like, all right, I'm in good hands if anything happens. Well, I had this insurance broker and the same, company for 3 years. Every year it was a problem to renew. Every single year it was a problem. I never got renewal notices. My bad for not, being proactive, handling it myself. The last year I put it in my calendar like a month ahead of time to remind myself to renew my insurance. But I think I was traveling and I missed my own calendar reminder. And when I got back from traveling, I tried to pay on the website, and the website wouldn't take my payment. It didn't recognize my insurance policy. And so I sent an email to the insurance company and the broker, didn't hear back from them. And on the third day that I didn't hear back from them, I got hit by a truck and got pushed off the road, almost over a ravine. If it had been dry season, I would have gone over the cliff because there wouldn't have been the vegetation that was growing, to prevent that. So I didn't have insurance at the time of the accident. Now, thankfully, it was somebody else's fault. And because of the age of my car, I wouldn't have been able to get full coverage. So I wouldn't have had comprehensive coverage. I only have liability. And in this case, it was the Naturgy truck at fault. It hit a truck in front of me, and then it hit me. But my insurance would have covered the attorney cost because I had to go to court. You have to go to court if there's a commercial vehicle involved in an accident, and the towing cost to get my car towed somewhere, out of the side of the road. I called the agent. Anyway, it was just a mess. Like the whole thing was a mess for a long time. And it continues to be a mess, actually, because I dropped that person, dropped that insurance, found someone to help me with, getting my car fixed because I was given incorrect information about the towing. I wasn't given any information about the process of what happens when you get a damaged car. And anyway, so someone filed, papers with MapFree. That's the Naturgy trucks insurance company. But there was a bunch of, or maybe one or two receipts that weren't actually in the collection. And so MapFree is only offering me, they're offering me $1,000 less than what I paid to have my car fixed. So I'm still kind of dealing with back and forth with that. And my accident was in October of 2023. I was without my car for 5 months because I had assumed that the process was MapFree would send someone to look at my car and assess whether it was totaled or, what kind of repairs that they would pay for. Then I was told, no, I could go get my car fixed and just submit receipts. Well, now that I've done that, that's actually not proving to be accurate because MapFree is denying the receipts and claiming that there's depreciation and claiming that, well, our garages say that, they wouldn't have charged, this much for the labor or the parts. So I'm still really not clear on what that process is. But anyway, so I'm still waiting, for the resolution of that to happen. I paid out of pocket and am waiting to agree on what I'm going to be reimbursed for. If they could even come up with another $500, I would just be happy to eat that $500 expense just to get it wrapped up and done and just be finished. Well, hopefully I haven't scared you into not driving in Panama. You just have to be cautious and fill up on gas, whenever and wherever you can, especially if you're going to be going to off the beaten path areas. And also, especially after Santiago, before you get to Cherokee Province, there's not much. So stock up on, snacks and gas, and use the restroom in Santiago before you drive out to the Cherokee area. And that's actually a very pretty stretch of highway, hardly any traffic, and the roads are in pretty good condition. They were anyway a few years ago when I've been there. It's been a while, so you just never know what the conditions are going to be like. Let me know in the comments what your experience has been like driving in Panama, or any information or content suggestions that you would like me to cover. Thanks so much for tuning in and subscribing. I really appreciate it. See you next week.